Road podcast, telling the stories of the South Texas racers from the past and present.
Hello, my name is James Parks, and welcome to the Thunder Road podcast. I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, S&S Monuments, 112 Bodies, Proline Fabrication, and Top Hat Signs and Designs. And on this episode, we speak with Bobby Grobe. Bobby Grobe has been involved in local racing for many years, as well as has been a father figure for many racers in the local area. And on this episode of the Thunder Road podcast, we welcome Bobby Grobe. Personally, I've known Bobby Grobe for many years. I don't know exactly how long, but he probably doesn't realize he taught me a lot about racing. He taught me a lot about friendship. And he taught me a lot about etiquette on a dirt track. So we'll talk about some of those things, but let's welcome Bobby Grobe. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Man,
Honored
tell
to
us,
be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you want us to know, I suppose.
Well, that's kind of a scary thought and a dangerous road to travel, but I've lived here all my life, and as a kid, my family never went to the races. My brother took me there. Started to get that.
When you say took you to the races, I'm assuming CC Speedway
CC Speedway back then, yeah. Back in the olden days, back then it was CC Speedway.
So when you say olden days, give me a year.
We're
roughly.
talking early 70s.
All right, I wasn't born yet. So
yeah,
I was born in 77. So
I understand.
I do recognize those as the old days, or maybe the golden years, as they say.
I was already buying beer at the time you was born. Yeah,
I believe it.
But my brother took me to the races and kind of got me, take little brother along and got a taste of it. And then as I got older, my best friend. The guy was building a car for his brother, and we were going to go out drinking. We was in high school.
Like a stock car type deal?
Well, yeah, and asphalt. And so anyways, it was a hobby car back then, 2-barrel car, 8-inch street tires. And so he said, let's go check out this car.
So hold on. So street tire. So yeah. CC Speedway, as long as I knew, was always a street tire atmosphere.
Back in the days, with Rap and Slick Yeomans and Billy Hardcastle, modifieds all had 10-inch slicks on them.
Did they?
And but we had to run a G60 street tire on a hobby car. And so anyways, Kelly says, let's go check out this car this guy's building for my brother. And so we went over there one Friday night and Tommy Jones' house. And he's building a car for Kelly's older brother, Joey Melhart. And so he was banging on some sheet metal, trying to act like he was an interior guy, and had some galvanized steel that they got from the AC shop he worked for, and was bending it on the side of the bench with a hammer.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and of course,
grassroots.
Here I was 17. We'd already had I don't know how much beer that night, and he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And of course, smart ass. Yeah. Think it looks like crap, and you think you can do any better? And I'm like, hell yeah. And next thing you know, I'm working on their cars.
You were the crew guy. He volunteered, it sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much. And so, that was Tommy Jones back then. And so we worked on Joey's car that year, first race car I got to work on.
You say Joey
Melhart.
Melhart, okay.
Yep. And his family used to own the Melhart piano and organs. And Jim Melhart, you bound to have known.
No, I was going to say, were they related to the Melharts down in the valley?
Absolutely, that was Jim.
They were staunch competitors down there.
Oh, yeah, yep. Absolutely.
Top of the line equipment. They were the first racing team that I ever saw that had matching shirts. Like, that was crazy to me.
Hey, man, they had them English Ford 4-cylinders. Man, they were some kind of bad fast, man.
Selling pianos, we've been in the wrong business.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, so anyways, started working with them. Well, Joey only raced part of that first year and then got out. And so we kind of messed around, and Tommy's better friends, or maybe his best friend, was Mickey Rye, and they were racing buddies from years back when Tommy used to drive, back in the early 70s and back in the old 55, 56, 57 Chevrolet days, And so anyhow, started building a car for Mick, and I became the fabricator and became the welder and did all the car painting.
The tubing, the sheet metal, the whole deal, front to back.
It, man, every bit of it. Hung the bodies, did all the paint work, and kind of went from there, And then in 1980, Roger Rosebrock, good friend of Tommy's and ours, he was leaving town, and he had a hobby car, and he called one day and said, man, I'm selling all my stuff. Man, I'm moving to Alabama or somewhere over there, and going to do a deal with his brother. And so Tommy says, well, what all you got, and this, that, and another. He had a Nova hobby car. And so anyways, well, what are you going to do with the old car? And he said, well, I'm going to sell it too, And so Tommy kind of brokered the deal for me. And well, what's going on with your sponsor? And well, AJ's going to be looking for a driver. And next thing you know, we went over there and I picked up a car and picked up a bunch of leftover parts and went to North Beach and talked to AJ Semino, had a Texaco station on North Beach. And man, I had a full sponsor. And next thing you know, we hauled that car to the scrapyard and started building a brand new chassis.
Oh man,
and took off from there.
Just kind of started growing. So it all stemmed from going in and telling a guy his craftsmanship was crap.
Yeah,
and then here you are with a race car and a sponsor.
Absolutely, And so I don't know whether to run him down.
I don't know that you've ever held back on your words.
Yeah, and I look back on it and I try to always think to myself, man, should I drive to? He's up there in the Houston area right now, but I think to myself, should I drive up there and go beat the crap out of him or thank him? And seriously, it's been racing's a tremendously large part of my life, and
No, I think I think the racing world is very intriguing to me because we race together. A lot of times we work together. We fight with each other, and then the racers are right back there to help each other. Like that's just the way that the racing community works from my point of view. But so tell us a little bit about that. So you had the sponsorship, you built a car, you went to the speedway with it, I suppose.
That first year we started racing there in hobby cars, and Frankie Mayak was probably my biggest nemesis, and he was probably the most experienced in the group, racing in the class. Later on in the year, I was introduced to Leonard and his son Ronnie, and we've become pretty good racing friends. And but started the first year, raced a full season, led the rookie points for the first of the year, most of the year. Got into a little bit of a problem trying to finish races in the later part of the year, and
just mechanical failures, or a driver getting a little aggressive, or a little bit of both?
Nah, it's probably a little bit of aggression on all of us included on the track,
I think most drivers get to a point where they get burned out, and then they just get tired of working on it, wrecking it, and then they just kind of lose their mind a little bit.
Well, what started happening is it started pressing hard, and actually what happened is about halfway through the season, Tommy puts this thought in my head that, we can win this. Now, I don't know today because I've never really gone back in the records, but at the time, whether this was true or not, I don't know, but I think this was the driving force that he put behind me to drive the car. He told me, he says, nobody has ever won rookie points in hobby cars, not even Terry Labonte. And I'm like, man,
We'll have to get our historian Mike Riley to look into that.
And so that was a goal for me, and unfortunately late in the year things happened and wrecked the car a couple of weeks from the end of the season, hurt it pretty bad, and finished second in points. Just a couple of markers.
Well, but still, for your first time out in that car, first year racing as a rookie, that's not bad. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
For some of you all that don't know, CC Speedway was kind of one of those tracks where, when you entered it, you were in there. I say those guys were gladiators, honestly, because
it was a bull ring.
It was a bull ring. It was unforgiving.
Yeah, very unforgiving.
There was one way in and one way out.
Yep.
And I tell everybody, anybody that'll listen to me when I talk about CC Speedway, and I spent a very small amount of time there, you were gladiators when you were running around in that place.
Yeah, it was pretty cool back then, because in those days, even the late models could run side by side, even as small as that track was.
Well, there was a lot of respect back then, too. There was a different amount of respect.
Well, so, way back, one of the first things that Tommy did, Slick Yeomans was real close friends with Tommy, Slick and his dad, Al Capone. And so,
Hold on. His dad, Al Capone? That was
Al Yeomans, yeah.
Okay, they just said Al Capone.
Yeah, well, that's what they called him.
That's what they called him. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, that's what they called him.
So Mr. Keys, Jody Keys, he clarified to me that Slick was not his real name. I thought that was his real name.
So I don't know what his real name is.
And there was Racer. Well, no, we have to listen to his son. You have to listen to the podcast. If you listen to the Jody Keys podcast, it's going to tell you what their actual names were.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, it was very interesting to me. I thought that was their real names.
Yeah. And so anyways, we would go out there every Saturday, to get parts, hobby car. My car was a Howe copy. We built a brand new car, Camaro front stub, bought one of those Canadian stock car product roll cage kits and bought some square tube and laid it out on a concrete floor.
Because you were a craftsman, because you told the other guy his shit was crap.
Yeah, So anyways, but one of the things out there was Slick one day, and we're sitting out there across the counter, and one of the things that he told me, he says, let me tell you something. He said, a lot of guys can smash and bash, but a real racer can start a race and finish a race with his paint and his paint only.
That speaks volumes.
And that is the way those guys drove, and of course, I did a pretty decent job of that on pavement. I didn't do too good a job of that when I got on dirt,
Well, two different facets, two different animals.
Yeah, well, had no idea just how much different dirt really was,
So tell us a little bit. So after your rookie season, did you continue to run some of the dirt, some of the asphalt stuff? You traveled around. We stayed home. What did we do there before
I didn't
because you did transition into the dirt racing.
Yeah, well, that was a while later.
Yeah,
but no, the next year, I kind of just floundered around and still was helping Tommy and Mickey. And then in '82, I got my first limited late model. And we were racing in San Antonio. We went up to San Antonio to Highway 16. And we built a brand new car for Mickey. And I had a car. Went up there and raced, wrecked.
Race, wreck, repeat? Just kind of that deal?
Kind of, sort of, and, smashed the car pretty bad one night, and so, it was kind of one of those things that it was kind of out of my league. I was racing a class I really couldn't afford. I had a decent car, but it wasn't.
Racing has always been expensive, and like I talked about before, just trying to compete in the class that you can afford. Sometimes it's hard because racers will price ourselves out of a class very quickly. That's one of our horrible traits that racers have.
So I ended up selling that car and just continued to work with Tommy and Mickey on Mickey's car, and stayed real involved with it, and then we kind of parted ways. It kind of became
so our Tommy and Mickey
friendship.
Tommy and Mickey, are these the Brew Crew guys?
Well, we all were.
Okay, yeah. So you guys formed this little group of.
Well, it was pretty much known that when they ran out of beer, the beer line, to come to our truck.
I got you. Fair enough.
And I will admit that we drank more than our fair share of beer. And
so racing happens, ups and downs, highs and lows, and then the friendship kind of gets in a weird spot.
Yeah, well, kind of what ended up happening is. Mick and me, it never was an issue with me, but apparently it was an issue with Mickey that, Tommy and I, of course, Tommy got me my first job in the air conditioning business in '77 when I was still in high school, when we first started messing with the car. And so anyways, we became good friends, and Mickey all of a sudden kind of felt like, well, wait a minute, Tommy's my friend, not yours, and I'm not willing to share. And it actually came down to, we almost got in a fist fight one time out at Jim Fisk's house out there in the bluff over it,
Things happen.
We parted ways, and so then in, I guess, '85, I got another late model. And
Asphalt late model,
yeah. And it was a car that I bought from Leonard, and we were going to CC Speedway, and the rumor on the other side of town was Mick and Tommy were building a car, and there was going to be a showdown, and I'm like, well,
Gladiators.
there you go, and of course it even came to Friday night before opening night of CC Speedway was going out there. Al came and told me, he says, hey, look, man, rumor is Mick's coming for you, and he says, I know you. He said, one of y'all ain't coming back.
So let's back up a little bit, because you've mentioned two names that were huge in your and not just in your life, but in your racing.
Absolutely.
And actually both of those same men.
Yeah.
I learned a little bit from those guys. So let's talk a little bit about Al, and let's talk a little bit about Leonard, and tell us how your relationship with them came to be, and what they did to get you where you needed to be.
Pretty crazy how it all started out. So I met my wife of today, and we were dating, and so she had told me that her daddy was real interested in hanging out at the races, and of course, we've been dating for quite a while and never ever met him, never ever saw him, never could find him. Really kind of seemed like he was evading me, so I don't really know what the skinny was. Well, so one night we're coming home from CC Speedway, and, it's typical 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're going down SPID, and Susan tells me, we passed this gold Cadillac on the side of the road with a flat tire, and she says, that's my daddy. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, well,
What threw you off, the Cadillac or the fact that it was gold?
Yeah, well, it was a toss-up. Well, so anyways, I said, want me to turn around and go back and help him, And so anyways, most everybody knows that Al wasn't real mechanically inclined, and changing a flat tire.
He can sell boats, though.
Yeah, he can sell boats, So we turn around, and I go back over there and pull up behind him, and, he's got a spare tire in the trunk, and of course it's flat, And so I get out, and I said, you need some help? And he never said a word. And he was struggling around with the tire, and I said, let me get it. And so I grabbed the tire, and I said, obviously this ain't going to help. And so I throw it in the back of the truck, and I said, well, you want to ride? Never said a word, and shut the trunk. And I said, well, if you want to ride, come on, And so he climbed in the truck, and I took Susan. They lived apartment over there off of Nile and McArdle, and I took her and him to the house. Never said a word the whole time to me, man, And so anyways.
I'm sure he made up for that in the later years.
Yeah, well, it took a while, and of course, once he figured out that, I was going to marry his daughter, then I guess, things started to come around a little bit. And so we kind of went out, and Susan's parents were divorced at the time, separated at the time. And anyways, Big Al's best friend was Leonard. And so we went over to Big Al's house a time or two, and, started warming up to him warming up to me, and of course introduced me. And that's kind of when I first met Leonard at Christmas party, and
no, they were both very, very, very good men, and they were both highly respected in the local racing community.
Sure.
When they got to the track, when they walked to the track, everybody knew their name. Everyone went and talked to them and shook their hands.
Yeah. And they helped whoever they could, and that was a big thing.
They did.
A lot of people racing were pretty much, I ain't going to help you with anything because you might outrun me, and but anyways, they were always there to help whoever they could, whenever they could, and that's kind of how the relationship kind of started growing.
That's cool. So both these guys are now helping you with this limited late model deal. Is that kind of how this was at?
We ran that first year, and then my second son was born, and so we had that first car, and we started racing together, and we were running here at CC Speedway, and we ran College Station, Texas World Speedway, that first race of the year in the spring, and then we came back to the Speedway here, and we ran here and blew an engine up. And of course, we had these ideas of we were going to race for a living, or we're going to race where we can really race. Down here we can only race on Saturday night. And so we had these plans. Al was a boat dealer, and he was repping Sportcraft boats out of Florida, and he had the entire Gulf Coast all the way to Texas, from Florida to Texas, and the state of Oklahoma was his sales region. And, of course, his main office was in Florida. And here we are living in Texas, and he's at the other end of the world from it. And so we were like, Leonard was retired from military and retired from used to work for Tolosa Midway School District back then. And so he could go anywhere he wanted to. And so, let's move to Alabama, So we had these plans, and we went to Talladega that year, and we took a week and went down through, ended up deciding that Montgomery was going to be where we wanted to land, and we could have raced 9 different tracks on 6 nights in a 100-mile radius of Montgomery.
It's a different racing community up there for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And so that was going to be fine for Al. That put him right in the middle of his territory. Leonard could move wherever he wanted to move. My wife, company she was working for, their company insurance office was in Montgomery, and they were on the phone, and she already had a job. And I went and Alabama Refrigeration, met with them guys, and they had a job for me. It was signed up. They guaranteed me 60 hours a week for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, man, so there's plenty of money, And but anyways, then I got to thinking, well, wait a minute, man, that's like 512s or 610s, and I'm like, the only reason I'm moving to Alabama is to race. And if I'm working 60 hours a week, when am I going to ever race?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is going to work out. Well, so anyways, we come back to Texas, and we blow a motor up here in Corpus. And Leonard was building the engines for me and putting motors in my car. I took care of the car. Al helped me with the car. And
did Al actually change the tires after he learned a little more?
He would unload them out of the trailer and roll them over there. But no, that was pretty
he would tell you where they were.
That was pretty much
the
my
tires
job.
are right there.
Yeah, and so. But anyways, engine blows up. And so Leonard's supposed to be building another engine for me, and he tells me he's got the rods and crank and everything all at Bill Rogers at the shop. Back then, Bill Rogers used to be the main machine shop in Corpus for racing engines. And so I happened to stop in there one day and talk to Rapp and them and Rick Rapp, and hey man, how's that motor coming along? And what motor, And I says, well, Leonard's supposed to have rods and pistons coming in, crankshaft, and start punching a block, and we ain't got anything. So anyways, I go to the house, and I don't know, next night or so, something like that, we're over at Leonard's house, and we're talking, and actually so we kept the car just down the street here in Randy Curtis's old shop there for a while. Leonard and Ronnie and them had bought that shop. And so anyways, we had the car there, but we was over at their house one evening, and I just asked him, I said, what do you think about the motor? Oh, yeah, it'll be ready any time now. And I'm like, well, the stuff's not even in the machine shop.
Something's awry here, because something's not adding up.
Going right, And anyways, needless to say, we had a little falling out, And I said, well, you know what? I said, I'll be at the shop tomorrow. I'll pick my car up and get all my stuff out of your shop and everything and bring it all home and appreciate what you've done for me. And so anyways, that kind of, broke off the relationship with me and Leonard. And, and I got home and I got to thinking to myself, man, what if we'd have moved to Alabama and that would have happened in Alabama?
Life decisions right there.
Wow, man, boy, did I, do we luck out on that deal? Well, so then about 87, I guess when I just completely quit, and of course what ended up happening is my oldest son started playing baseball. And so I figured, you know what?
Takes up a little bit of time.
We'll just put the race cars aside, and I'll start coaching them in baseball. And so I took a hiatus for a while, and got away from it, and started coaching them till they got close to the high school year. It took about 7 years of coaching them, and they started to get close to high school age, and it started getting to the point where the old man don't know nothing no more, and so it's like, okay, well, go ahead and
you go do
high
your
school
thing, I'll do
coaches
mine.
will take over, Well, so anyways, of course, I wanted to race, but my last handful, I started helping Robert Punsey for a while there at CC Speedway, and man, it just seemed to be a crash fest every night, man. And I told Big Al, I says, man, I want to get a car, and just go back to racing again, but man, I don't want to go out there and. It's just not my intentions to be rebuilding a car every Saturday night.
You can't necessarily make the cars faster if you're constantly rebuilding them from wreck damage. It makes
absolutely.
That very, very hard.
You don't make no progress. So we actually we talked about. I said, I think I want to buy a pro stock drag car. I said, ain't no wrecking, and it's going to have to be fast to satisfy the desire, and so and he's like, man, you don't want to do that, and I think, well, yeah, man, I don't want to rebuild these things, and and I said, I have a lot less chance of running into anybody or wrecking them, and they'll go plenty fast, and so and Jerry Edwards was building a dirt track back then.
Yes, sir.
And so anyways, he's like, let's get a dirt car. I'm like, man, I was still in the old school days of CC Speedway where, they used to say asphalt's for racing and dirt's for growing potatoes, man. And I was still on that program, And so anyways, we ended up, okay, we're going to build a dirt car.
We're going to go dirt racing.
Well, Big Al, PR man, next thing I know, he comes by the house and he says, hey, we need to make a phone call. And I said, what's that? And he says, well, I got somebody I want you to talk to. So we get on the phone, and it's Rex Merritt, up there working at Dirtworks at the time. And anyways, we make a deal, and they build us a brand new dirt car. Well, in the process of that,
this is a dirt modified.
Dirt modified, okay. Yeah, yep. And true IMCA 325 claim rule back then in those days, And so anyways, we next thing I know, Al calls me. He says, man, what do you think about being a dealer? And I'm like, well, man, I don't even know anything about racing. How am I going to sell dirt chassis, And he says, well, we buy 3 cars, man, we can knock like 30% off the price of the cars, and
it's
all
like
the
selling
parts.
boats.
There you go, man, And so anyways, next thing I know, we're driving to Missouri, and I go pick up 3 chassis. Well, I buy 2 dirt cars, and I buy an asphalt car. And of course, the asphalt cars were built by a guy named Bart Bates down in Springfield. So I had a trailer that I built in the driveway ready, and I rigged this trailer up to be able to haul 3 frames on it, and we took off and we loaded 2 dirt frames on it in Walker, Missouri. And boy, if you ain't ever been to Walker, Missouri, let me tell you something. That's a town to go to, man.
Like nightlife happening, or what's going on there? No, man,
I'm gonna tell you what, man. It's
got a big trade center.
It was probably like population 19.
Sounds like Petronia.
12 of them worked at the race shop, and the race shop was the biggest building on Main Street, and they didn't even have a restroom, man. They went out the back door by a big old tree there in the people that lived behind them's backyard, man. It's crazy, man.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to build race cars.
You talk about some hillbilly racers, but anyways, we're a Dirtworks dealer. And
no, as a young man, I spent some summers up here with my brother. He was stationed at the naval base, and I remember driving up Weber Road, and like we discussed earlier, there was a shop on the left-hand side coming into town. It had the big Dirtworks sign. I grew up 8 miles from the border, so I had seen race cars that my dad raced and that Robert Tazier brought down, but to actually see a shop that actually said, like, we were a dealer for a specific chassis that was huge to me. That shop could have been Rick Hendrick's shop as far as I was concerned. I think it was with my brother. I got him to stop in there, and I walked in, and I was just in awe of what I saw. And it was nothing more than a couple of dirt cars, and there was a tall, skinny kid, which we later determined to be Nicky Hardcastle.
Yep.
But I do remember that as a young man, I was just in awe by the fact that close to home, there was a place where you could buy a race car, like brand new. Yeah. That was crazy to us because most of the stuff that we got down south was used, wore out, mostly from the Corpus area. Sure. So when y'all were done with it, we it was new to us.
Well, the hottest spot used to be buying cars is to go down there for Miller Nationals every December, and all those travelers that come from up north didn't want to take them cars back, and they knew it was a hotbed, and hey man, people just swarmed on buying them cars right off the track after the feature.
So cars are purchased in the valley that way, as well as Taser when he would go to speed weeks and stuff, he would buy cars, things that we had never seen, and bring those back to the valley, and then obviously they would get bought up that way too. But Taser was a huge influence in South Texas racing. I've said that for many years, and one day I hope to have him where I can talk to him on the podcast, because Taser set the standard for racing in South Texas, and a lot of folks don't know that.
Absolutely. He had a really good program and a really Brian and Chris and me, we talk about it all the time about how we miss racing on that track down there.
If you can make a car hook up at Rio Grande Speedway, you could go fast anywhere.
Yes, sir.
And I truly believe that's what makes the Maupin family so fast, because Bobby was a master at that dry slick.
Yep.
And taking that knowledge he had and rolling that into Jared's program, it's huge.
Yep.
So we're a Dirt Works dealer now. We got the sign up. We're working on cars. We're selling cars like candy bars. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, I only sold like 7 cars is all I sold. 2 of them I used for myself, so I only sold 5 cars outright. One of them went to Nick, was the first dirt modified that he had. And, and we really leaned on Nick and for dirt knowledge, and so it was kind of we helped them get a car, and and we got help in return, on what to do, and
it worked in both of y'all's favors.
Absolutely, and so anyways, we headed out and started racing, and we raced here, and we raced in San Antonio at the old dirt track. Used to call it Texas Dirt, behind the drag strip, behind Highway 16. And, man, that was a mud hole. Rough, fast. Man, I saw Troy Bird one time got so much mud on the interior that his whole side of his car caved in. There was so much mud piled on.
I don't know that I ever got to go to that track. I don't think that I ever got to visit there, but I have heard stories good and bad about it, but that's probably with any racetrack.
Yeah. But that's where I got my first dirt win. And probably
so what year was that?
That was in 94.
All right, so
that was the first year I started.
In 1994 you won a feature. What did it pay?
$400.
$400.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm gonna let you know that winning a feature nowadays ain't too far from that.
So. Not too far from that. No, absolutely not too far at all. But so I had a brand new car, rolling, race ready, with no transmission and no engine, for under $8,000.
Well, you can't do that anymore.
Brand new. Okay. And so I was buying a Midwest Motorsports short block for $11.99. It was a 377, stock rod, stock crank, actually a long block, and buying a pair of open chambered heads, 76cc open chamber heads for $329, bolting it on. So for less than $1,800, I had an engine in the car. So I had a brand spank new car from front to rear for $10,000.
With a $325 claimer.
With a $325 claim. Well, so I didn't feel like I was going to take too bad a loss on that deal, and things progressed to 5, 6. All of a sudden, what started happening is the Pflugerville engines started to be popular motors, and next thing you know, they're 5,500 and 7,500, and man, still had a 325 claim rule, and thank God they eventually bumped it to 550 in a swap, and so it was like, man, we
At
could,
least you felt like
we
you got
could
a little
make
something.
We could make some money on this deal, and so didn't have a lot of good luck here in Corpus. Ran here, ran a couple of years, 97, started running my second new car. And
it was a Dirt Works as well?
Yeah, it was
modified.
Dirt Works, yeah. And so anyways, had a minor altercation with a very influential person with the track, and obviously he didn't like how I raced him. And next thing I know, he turns me around in the middle of the corner, and it all comes to a standstill, and he's swinging at me inside the car. And make a long story short, I told the track management I'm gonna take my toys and go play elsewhere.
And what year was that?
And that was in '97. And so I spent the most of that year, and by that time Pleasanton opened up, and so we spent most of the year driving right past South Texas Speedway to go race elsewhere because
I know that happens a lot, and that's one of my pet peeves is if there's a local track, you need to support it. Obviously, sometimes our tempers and our different ideas kind of get in the way, and that is part of it. But if there's a local track, you got to kind of do what you got to do to try to support it. But I understand things happen.
Yeah, Well, when track management, we've always said that anytime track management has a race car on the racetrack, it's never going to work.
There's always going to be questions.
There's always going to be an issue. And, we just felt like, what? We go play in somebody else's backyard.
So you decided to kind of step away, after you did your racing at 37?
No, we went and we started running there. And then, of course, track management changed here in Corpus, and Owen came on the horizon. And so we come back to start racing here. And so we raced here, and we raced Pleasanton, and we raced Goliad. I only ever ran Goliad one time my entire life. I never liked it. And
was that 2005?
And so that was that was earlier than that. Raced Texana quite a bit, And so then,
so in 2005 at Texana, it shows in the Gonzales Inquirer. I don't know if you knew that you were in the Gonzales Inquirer in 2005.
I didn't even know the Gonzales Inquirer even existed,
I don't
much
know
less covering racing.
I don't know if this is your actual claim to fame or not, but in the Gonzales Inquirer, it shows that you finished third at Texana Raceway Park in the IMCA Modified. Steve Whitaker was first, Dale Flanagan was second, and you were third. And it said in the article that it was a Corpus Christi run show. Like you guys ran away with the show, left the field behind. But if you're curious, you can Google search it.
I have to go back and take a look at that and see exactly what the skinny was with that, because I obviously didn't have subscription to the.
No, well, you might just go try to get one now. See if we get a back issue.
You think they might have that on in the archives?
Maybe. Yeah. Like I said, we'll have to get Mike Riley to look some of this stuff up. Absolutely. So Riley helped me with one of the earlier episodes, and I told him he was going to be the Thunder Road podcast historian. So he found some information on a racetrack in Corpus in 1933. We've jokingly talked about Lawrence and stuff racing there. That was his first race. So Riley is kind of my go-to. So I'll have him look up some of this stuff and see if we can't find some of that stuff for you.
Yeah.
So after the Texana deal, we're still racing some dirt races.
Yeah, we're still just messing around, piddling around, running here, running in the valley, going back and forth. And
we touched on the Nationals earlier. A lot of the youngsters did not get to see and or participate in the Miller Modified Nationals.
Yeah.
That was a huge deal.
It was a big deal.
That was a huge deal.
They had guys that came all the way from Michigan,
If you won that race, you were somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you survived the parties after the race, you were somebody.
So this was the local, this is what we learned was the local angle. So it was Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night.
So tell the listeners, how far away was Rio Grande Speedway from the actual border?
Well, I don't know. I hadn't really went past it, because
4 miles, maybe.
And there was this big old dike along the back straightaway off of turn 2 down the back straight. And I always kind of wondered if the river was right on the other side of it.
It was on the other side. It was.
Yeah. So we was down there pretty close, Well, so what we figured out, so it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday show. And so you ran like a regular Saturday night race on Thursday, had heats, qualifying heats, and a qualifying A main. And Thursday night, top 5 cars went to the inside of the front row for Saturday's big show. And Friday night, you came in there and did it all again, and top 5 in the A main on Friday night was outside front rows for the A, and then everybody on Saturday came back for last chance qualifiers and all of that, right?
Checkers or wreckers for the most part at that point.
So,
but when that was going on, like the locals down there, and obviously the Corpus cars were considered locals in a show like that. But
sure.
To see some of the stuff that those guys brought down, to see some of the cars, to see some of the haulers, to see some of the just the things that they brought with them, it was a schooling to some extent. But
absolutely.
The locals also held their own.
Well, so the key thing was you had to make sure that you was on your best game Thursday night as a local down here, with the exception of a couple. You take like Lawrence was probably one of the best that qualified more than anybody down there, because about 80% of them dudes all went and hung out at Taser's house. But so Corpus would run Thanksgiving weekend, Friday and Saturday, Thanksgiving weekend. And that was the week before that. So all these guys are all snowed out and froze out up north, and they would all come and they would hit here and race Friday and Saturday here, and then go and they all stayed at Robert's house. They parked all their haulers there at his place, somewhere's there, his house or his shop or wherever, I don't never know. And then they partied across the border. Well, then come Thursday night, you had to be on your game because all them guys were still hungover, man, You had
to take advantage of the situation.
Absolutely, man. We had to take our best shot when we had a chance, because when them dudes start sobering up come Friday night, man, here they start
they were
coming,
hard to catch.
man,
for sure. And as a young man, I remember like being there. I remember driving into the pits and seeing all those haulers. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, how do those guys afford that? How can they afford to do this? But it was crazy just to see that. So,
yeah. Well, we thought we were okay. I don't think that I was ever great on dirt, but I thought we were okay. And so I remember one of the first races, I like, I'm gonna get out there. I'm gonna go out there and hot lap with these guys.
I'm gonna show them how to do it.
I'm gonna go figure out what they're doing, And so I get out there, and I'm out there with Pursley and Boyner and Tim Donlinger was down. Old John Logue was down. And I'm riding along behind Pursley, and I'm running my line, and they're running their line. And I swear to God, we're on a figure 8 race, because they're going one way and I'm going the other. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I might be doing something wrong here, And so I got to the point where I made a point of picking who I thought was fast, and I just watched them. And when they got ready to go hot lap, I made sure I was in line behind them. And I probably learned more about dirt racing following those guys, just watching them, and because those guys had it going on. Man,
no, they say you're only as good as who you race, and if you got to race with some of those faster guys, you learn some of their procedures. You learn some of their entrances, their exits, and different things that they did. It has to help you as a racer if you're willing to pay attention and to learn. So as we all know, Bobby Grobe has a ton of stories, and all of these stories cannot fit into one podcast. So right now, we're going to take a pause. We're going to take a break. Again, I want to thank our sponsors: Top Hat Signs and Designs, Proline Fabrication, 112 Bodies, and S&S Monuments. This will be a 2-part podcast. We want to make sure that everyone gets to hear all of Bobby's stories. So thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.